Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, or good evening, I guess that would be, to SilmFilm Project. This is not Dave Cale, this is Trish Lambert, and I will neither confirm nor deny the rumor that Dave Cale and I are the same person, because we have not been together on the SilmFilm Project, and even though during the webathon we were supposedly together, if you notice, Trish was not on camera, so we still have not established
Can't prove
whether
it.
or not Dave and I are the same person, yes. So Dave was here the last two times, and I unfortunately could not be. I'm here today, and we are sort of waiting to see if Dave's going to show up, and if he does, that'd be great. If not, we will carry on without him. So we are in season. We're going to be doing episode 3 of season 3 of the Silmarillion Film Project, and we have a lot to cover, so we better get to it, right, Corey?
That's right. Excellent. So welcome back, everybody. I am feeling so much better after our discussion last time of the outline of season 3. So we're going to start with reviewing that. You guys have responded, as you always do, to my charge to come up with a sort of an official and detailed outline based on the many of the ideas that we worked out last time. So we're going to start with that here in just a minute. But first, I wanted to just take a minute to emphasize how grateful I am to you guys for your wonderful response to our fundraising campaign. Our fundraising campaign was awesome. We ended up raising in our campaign, Trish, we ended up at almost $53,000.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was fantastic. Awesome. We beat our previous record by $10,000 this year.
Wow.
That is great. It was stunning.
And is the rumor true that you're going to be running to Mordor as a chicken?
That is true, in fact. Yes, the rumor is true. So as soon as we can get that sorted out, we're going to be doing. I'm officially calling it the fried chicken run.
You should call it the hot wings run.
The hot wings run. Anyway, yes, I will be doing. That will be fun.
That'll be really interesting. People on Twitch will get a chicken's eye view of Mordor, which is going to be pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Mordor for the first time through the eyes of a chicken, as I saw Minas Tirith for the first time. So it's gonna be pretty great. And yeah, Mario, I'm not sure how long that's going to take, but it'll be a little while to run all the way. Though, the run straight through to Minas Tirith didn't take more than, 6 hours? Maybe it was between 4 hours, something like that. It was. I expected it to take a whole lot.
I don't think we need to go through Minas Tirith. I think we go through Thillian. So
right.
I think so. Hologro will know. So our buddy,
that's good.
Our buddy Rob Henderson will be. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. That should be a lot of fun.
Yes.
But anyway.
Yes.
So that's great. I'm so thrilled that the annual fundraiser did. It's so great. Everybody is so. Thank you so much for supporting Signum. It's awesome.
Absolutely, that was really wonderful. I wanted to just also do 2 quick announcements. One is that TexMoot is coming. We're doing TexMoot in Fort Worth in January 13th. And there's a call for papers out for TexMoot. So if you're in Texas, anywhere around, if the Dallas-Fort Worth area is in any way accessible to you, I just wanted to invite you to not only plan to come on January 13th. I'm really looking forward to my second ever trip to Texas and getting to see folks down at TexMoot, but also there's still time now to propose a discussion or paper topic or something. So that'd be really cool. So just wanted to you can go to they even the TexMoot folks are really enthusiastic. They even made up their own website, texmoot.org. So you can just go to texmoot.org and get all the information about the conference. So that's really good. The other thing, Kurita requests a cowboy hat selfie. It kind of seems like if I go down to Texas and don't end up wearing, how can I be at TexMoot without a cowboy hat, right? I mean, I don't own one, but
it'll be a case of all hat, no cow. That's a saying in Texas. That band is
all
hat, no cow.
Okay. What does that mean? I'm not
It
sure.
means he's in it for the appearance, but he doesn't have any substance, any
Okay, all
accurate
hat no
substance.
cow means like you're just kind of a poser, right? You're just faking it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
all right. It's
Yeah.
all hat no cow. That's that's a I like that expression.
That's pretty cool, huh?
I like that expression in several ways. I think I'm going to try to integrate that into my vernacular. He's all
You
hat
could
no
use
cow.
that, like, when you're doing Mythac or something.
Yeah,
For,
totally.
using as
Yeah,
Isengard.
I'll see if I
Saruman
can.
is all hat, no cow.
He's all hat no cow. Yeah, everybody will immediately know just what I mean. Yeah, that's pretty good. Anyway, okay, so Tex Moot, January 13th. I am after the wonderful Trish. Did you hear about how awesome Iowa Moot was?
I did. Chris
Oh,
Stevens actually filled me in. He said it was really terrific.
It was great. We had 70 people show up. 70
That's
people
great.
for a first time ever regional event. That was
That's
just,
great.
it was great. It was so much
It
fun to
just shows
connect.
you how the people out in the sticks are clamoring for Signum, people outside the Atlantic area.
It was really fun to get the opportunity, and it was definitely something that it was one of the chief impressions I came away with is how happy and like the message I got from so many people out there was just how grateful they were that we were able to come out to them. There was even like in hearing a lot of people, there was a glimpse of I never thought this would happen kind of thing. So yeah, that I never thought you guys would actually come out to the Midwest. So anyway, I'm really.
We lost your sound there for a little while.
Oh really? Am I back now?
Yeah,
That's
for
weird.
about the last 5-10 minutes.
Last 5-10 minutes, yeah.
No, not 5-10 minutes. It was the thing that really, I think you said the thing that really impressed you, or the thing that really got you about.
Yeah, it was just that the not only the eagerness of the folks out there in the Midwest to participate in the discussion, but how not exactly surprised. That's not quite right, but how sort of delighted and grateful they were that we actually could come out. There was this sense of like they never thought it would happen. That we were able to come out near them. So I'm excited. And Tony, a Misty Mountain Moot near Denver would be fun. Actually, that would be really neat. I'm excited to do all kinds of regional events. Yes, I've definitely gotten a taste for this now, and I'm looking to travel all over the place and do regional moots. Moot
will travel.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right, so good. Oh, and hi, Lee, up there in the Twitch chat. Good to see some folks joining me on Twitch, and I see I forgot to change the title on the Twitch channel, which is great. So, hi, Twitch folks. This is not the Treason of Isengard. This is the SilmFilm project. So, all right. Speaking of which,
At least it doesn't say Girls of Middle Earth. So, yeah.
Exactly. I've changed it once or twice since then. Okay. So let us proceed, because today we're going to talk about episode 3, the long procrastinated episode 3. But first, before we do anything so rash, I want to review the outline that you guys made. And I'll tell you in advance that I'm really happy with this. We'll see. There might be some individual things that we kind of discuss, and I imagine some things will end up maybe getting shuffled a little bit as we go through. But I am now feeling ready in my mind to move forward. So the first two, of course, are the ones we've already done. Episode 3, Unin Storm, Balerion in Peacetime, Thingol's Court, Círdan's Haven, Eol's Misanthropy. That's an excellent cluster of things there to talk about. Sindar encounter orcs. That's the main event on the Angband plot, and I love how this outline does a really great job of tracking through. Following basically our 3 main plot lines, which is the Noldor plot line, the Balerion plot line, and the Angband plot line. Okay, so in the Angband plot, Bulldog introduced and Sauron sent to find Ungoliant. So that's what we'll be talking about later on. Khazad I Menu, Episode 4, First Contact between Sindar and Dwarves, Tentative Alliance sought, Orc Skirmish, and Sauron meets Shelob in the Angband plot. Episode 5, Safe Haven, Meme ejected from Menegroth, and construction begins. Meme's embitterment starts. Angband plot, Bulldog sent south under Sauron's command. And then episode 6, Distant Cousins, the Green Elves and Ents arrive in Beleriand. So we get our first Treebeard action sequences here in episode 6. Episode 7, The Doom of Mandos, return to Noldor and Araman. Finarfin turns back. So, of course, we'll get the actual Doom of Mandos in this episode. And since that, in a sense, of course, that seems a little bit plot light, that episode. In that, of course, like the Doom of Mandos is awesome, but it's not going to take an hour to do the Doom of Mandos. But since we will just be joining the Noldor again after 3.5 episodes away from them, it'll be good to do so. We'll have plenty to do in sort of like, meanwhile, what's been going on with the Noldor and where do things stand as far as because we will have not seen them at all since really since the kinslaying. So there will be a lot of questions that we need to settle, like, how's Fingolfin doing these days? Like, what's Fingolfin's relationship with Finarfin like? There's going to be a lot of like aftermath. How are different people dealing with the aftermath of the kinslaying? Fëanor, Fingolfin, the son. We have to do some really good Fingon Mithros stuff, right, to get things set up. We also need to remember that we need to even have some good Erethdel, Sons of Fëanor scenes. Those relationships that we need to set up, because there's not going to be too much chance after this. Anyway, so we need to be thinking about that stuff. So there will be plenty for us to do in that episode. Angband, Sauron sends the werewolves against the Havens, so we're going to get the destruction of the Havens. And then in the Beleriand plot, Círdan's people retreat to their ships. Subsequent to the werewolf attack on the Havens. Episode 8, Betrayal. Fëanor arrives in Middle-earth, the argument with Mithros, and the burning of the ships, and the death of Amrod. I am not really well, we'll have to talk more about the death of Amrod there, but anyway, okay, we'll sort that out when the time comes. Shift back over to Valinor and have Finarfin returning. I really like that juxtaposition, the return of Finarfin to Valinor being juxtaposed with the betrayal of Fingolfin by Fëanor. I think that is a really interesting juxtaposition that has a lot of potential. And Fingolfin realizes he's been abandoned. In Beleriand, Círdan sees the light of the fires from a distance, and Gothmog and his spies see the fires as well, and Sauron begins his big plan for attacking Doriath. Episode 9, Dagor Nuin Gileath. Fëanor's forces mow down the orcs and push back Gothmog. And then in Beleriand, South Beleriand, Bulldog's forces mow down the Green Elves. I love the parallel there. And by the way, Hakan, I thought that this was kind of delightful, that in the end, we ended up compromising on which battle comes first, the first battle or the second battle, by having them both happen in the same episode. I was like, okay, that works. I can get behind that. Okay, so the Green Elves and Ents retreat to Osiriand. By the way, yes, I wanted to apologize for that. So you may hear thumping and noises in the background. I'm afraid I've got some construction going on at my house. So the thumping noises you hear are flooring being installed 2 floors up from me, and I'm as far away as I can get from it. But if you hear thumping, then Don't be alarmed, and I apologize for that. I think the noises shouldn't be too hideous, but it will be audible, I'm afraid. Okay, and then in Valinor we get Fingolfin setting out on the Helcaraxa. Okay, so episode 10, the Ice Desert. So the focus is on the crossing of the Helcaraxa there. In Beleriand, we have Doriath overrun by Shelob's spiders and Gothmog retreating to Angband, but Fëanor surrounded by Balrogs near the gates of Angband. This, by the way, really, one of the things that I was really excited to see in this outline is that we have solved one of the things that I was still really concerned about, which is, as you may remember, what do we do on the Helcaraxa? Like, we seem to have a couple crossing the Helcaraxa episodes, and how are we going to stretch that out in a way that's not going to be painful? Answer, by doing lots of other, by having plenty to do in the Beleriand and Angband stories too, because if we only need 15 to 20 minutes of Helcaraxa stuff, that's easy enough, right? It's having it support the entire episode for several episodes in a row that I was kind of concerned about. Okay, and then episode 11, the Spirit of Fire, the death of Fëanor. The sons of Fëanor renew the oath. In Valinor, the making of the sun and moon and the auroras are seen on the Helcaraxa. The death of Elenwe. And on the Helcaraxa again. And then down in Beleriand, Melian emerges from Menegroth and creates the girdle to dispel the spiders. That's the scene we were envisioning last time of that very dramatic cleansing of Doriath and establishment of the girdle by Melian. And I really like that. Both this idea of having Doriath be in that much danger, and to show that it is only because of the power of Melian that they were able to survive at all, and this really emphasizes that. But it also the girdle is such an important thing, but I was really worried about how do we show it. How do we make it clear how important the girdle is? Because it's like, okay, I'm now going to put this like magical but like probably invisible barrier around the woods so nobody can come in. Like, it's a negative thing, not a positive thing, right? A barrier that keeps people out, and that's not exciting. It's not. This establishment of it, and the way that it's going to be sort of attached, associated with cleansing, is I think really cool, and also nice because it helps to set up Galadriel and Lothlorien later on as well.
Yeah.
So, and of course, I have to admit, whenever we're depicting Melian, I'm going to have like half an eye on Galadriel, right? And setting up that parallel, because that parallel is, I think, a really important one.
We'll have Galadriel over on the side taking notes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Now, Tony, that's a really good question. Tony wonders if the establishment of the girdle weakens Melian the way that Melkor putting out his power weakens him. I don't know, Tony. On the one hand, the mere exerting of their power does not seem to weaken like making the stars doesn't seem to weaken Varda, for instance. Forging stuff doesn't seem to, like wrestling bouts don't tire out Tolkas exactly, right? That is, when they are performing their functions, when they're exerting their power in order to perform their functions, that doesn't seem to lessen them. Well, the thing that happens with Melkor is specifically when he puts forth, not just when he exerts his power, but when he disperses his power among his servants, right? When he puts some of his own spirit into them in order to raise them, to make them stronger, and to use them as more powerful instruments to dominate others. Like what Sauron does with the ring, of course. When Sauron puts much of his own spirit into the Ring of Power in order to enable it to overcome the power of the Elven Rings, in a sense, that's similar to what Sauron was doing. Remember, that where this starts, and this is actually something that we might want to, I'm thinking this is maybe something that we can do in season 4. Tony is really showing the beginning of this process by Sauron, how he really begins to disperse himself, because I'm thinking the failure of the orcs, and they fail less in the south, of course, but the failure of the orcs against the Noldor, right? The way that the Noldor the orcs can't possibly stand up against them. That, I think, is what prompts initially Morgoth to say, okay, the elves have been invested with power. The Calaquendi are coming over, and they're full of this, this Valinorian fire. I've got to make my orcs match them. So so just as Sauron is saying, the elves have made these rings of power, I need to put myself into a ring of power that can trump theirs, right? So he's trying to beef up the orcs in order to parallel and combat what the elves do. And then, of course, he wants to make bigger and bigger weapons, so you get Glaurung and the dragons and stuff like that. So that's how you get lessened, not by the mere exertion. Not, exactly, Lance. There is a sense in which his exertion of power there, it's not just performing his function, right? It's not just using his power to do sort of what he was meant to do. It's an abuse of his power. As Carita says, not in keeping with his purpose. Exactly. So now I agree, Marielle, that the girdle is something that is continually maintained by Melian, so there's like a continual effort on her part. I would think that that's why she doesn't do anything else, other than give advice that her husband doesn't pay attention to. So, like, basically she's restricted to doing, she is exerting her power and continuously exerting her power. So there's no question of like her going on the offensive or something like that, So I think that basically this is what she settles in to do. But I don't think we want to show it weakening her. I don't think we want to show her as if she's suffering because of it or anything. I would be perfectly fine with showing her being fully occupied by it, right? And that's okay. So yeah, again, but here I want to, Tony's thinking about like Gandalf being weakened with his combat with the Balrog, and of course even Tolkas gets all tuckered out right after all of the power that he exerts in helping the Valar to be. Remember how it's like, when he like takes a long nap right after his wedding, that Melkor sneaks back into the world. So it's not that the Valar can't ever get weary, or the Ainur can't ever get weary. They can get weary, but there's a difference between weariness, which will pass, as with Gandalf, of course, even it passes very quickly. Anyway, there's a difference between weariness, which can pass, and that dispersing of himself, that weakening of himself, that Melkor, that happens to Melkor as a consequence of how he uses his power. Now, Hakan, I agree that Morgoth puts power into the orcs before the Noldor arrive, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. We're going to get to the orcs later. I'll come back to that. Yeah. Yeah, again, I don't want to give the impression that the girdle is bad for Melian. I think that is an appropriate use of her power. And we don't want to be like, self-sacrifice is cool, but I don't think we want to make the girdle appear self-sacrificial. Like poor Melian burning herself out 24/7 to keep the girdle in place. Like, I don't want poor Melian to be what people are thinking, right? This is, again, like, she doesn't have any juice left for anything else. Like, she's totally occupied with the girdle and with being wise. But that's okay. Like, Thingol and Melian sitting in power in the midst of the girdle they're good and strong and not, she's not weary. I don't think that she's weary at all. Yeah. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to even go there. Again, we might work it in at some point into a conversation to maybe someone who doesn't know her, someone who doesn't know the situation, like one of the sons of Finarfin or something, has a conversation where they ask, like, why doesn't Melian is so powerful to repel our enemies? Why can't she, like, come with us and attack and help us in attacking Thangarodrim or something like that? And they can explain, like, the girdle's awesome, but she's tapped. She's maxed out. So, Mariel, yes, I don't think it should seem painful at all, the girdle. Again, remember, we're wanting to not do what Peter Jackson did with Galadriel. We're wanting to go in. So Melian is not going to turn green at any point. Like that, she is not going. And that it's honestly, it's one of the main. The turning green thing was weird enough, but the sense that Peter Jackson gave, what I objected to most in that is that sense that he gave that by exerting her power she was doing something wrong, or like taking evil into herself in some way, or that this was and I want to be miles away from that. So right, exactly. Haakon says if she would grow weary doing that, Tom Bombadil would be completely washed out by the third age. Yeah, I mean, yes, exactly. Now, I mean, if either one of them, Tom Bombadil or Melian, attempted to, like, continue to expand, right? I mean, if she tried to, like, drive Morgoth out of Beleriand entirely by widening the girdle, that would be a strain. She couldn't do it, right? And that would make her... But so basically, she's doing what she can do, and, what she can do, she's perfectly capable of doing, but she's not pushing it past what she can do. No, and she's not going to put her power into Beleg and the other warriors or anything like that. No, exactly. The only hint of that, of course, is Lembas, right? It's going to be Melian who invents Lembas, and so there is some of, like, the blessing of the queen that will be bestowed upon people through the giving of Lembas. But that's a minor thing. This is not, in fact, again, that's a thing that we could actually contrast with Sauron's investment of power into his folks. So yeah, Haakon, the first time we get Lembas first appears in the alliterative lay of the children of Húrin. I think Beleg has some and brings it to. That's how he helps. One of the ways in which he helps Turin and the Outlaws when he gets to them. So. It's not articulated in the same way. The word isn't used, and it's not articulated in the same way. But it's pretty clear, especially since it's in the gift of the queen and everything. It's pretty clear that that's the origin of Lembas, and that when Lembas is given to the Fellowship in Lorien, it's a hearkening back to that moment in the Lay of the Children of Húrin from Melian. So plus again, Galadriel, Melian, it all makes sense. So yes, I do think that we will need to introduce Lembas, and we can make that be one of the other ways in which she sort of blesses her people, and in which one of the other things that kind of sets the elves of Beleriand, or not just of Beleriand, of Doriath apart to some extent. But again, that can be a season 4 thing that we needn't go there at all. I think. In fact, I really don't think we're going to have time to. I don't want to waste. I don't want to waste Lembas on a throwing that off in 2 minutes in the middle of a random episode this season. But I didn't finish summarizing the outlines here. So we had gotten to episode 12,
Oh, by the way, I just want to let you know that Dave is in Armenia.
Oh, Armenia.
Yeah, I just checked email, and he had sent us a note that he said he forgot to let us know that he's in Armenia at a conference.
Right. Okay.
So, I mean, I think that's a pretty decent excuse, right?
Okay, right. Yes, I'm in Armenia this week. Yeah, that does make some sense. Yeah. Exactly.
So anyway,
Okay.
I want to
Cool.
wait till there was a break in the proceedings just to let you know.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
He's halfway across the planet.
Yeah, understandable. Okay, so we're saying episode 12. We have the arrivals, the rising of the moon. Fingolfin arrives from the Helcaraxa. Círdan discovers the burnt ships. Sauron returns to Angband. An emissary from Angband offers to parley with the sons of Fëanor. So we get the plan in place there to try to entrap the sons of Fëanor. And Maedhros accepts. And then 13, hope and despair and hope. The capture of Maedhros. His brothers refuse terms for his release. Morgoth nails him to the cliff. Fingolfin reaches Mithrim, the rising of the sun. Círdan's messenger reaches Thingol to tell him of the arrival of the Noldor. Yeah, I like it. That all works really well. Yeah. Okay, Hakan, this is the latest version that we were given, so we're this can be refined. This slide isn't going to be the permanent fixture or anything. This is just what we're given to kind of go over the overall shape here. So yeah, I like this. I said there's a non-zero chance that some things might develop in some different ways, or I might quibble with some points as we go. But on the whole, I'm really happy with this overall shape. And I like how it turns. My biggest question, in a sense, is going to be, I think one of the challenges is going to be waiting until we get to episode 9 for any serious battle. So, like, for instance, what is the action of episode 6? I mean, okay, the green elves and Ents arrive. That's going to be cool. But is that going to be, an hour's worth of cool? With them just arriving and hanging out? Like, what's going on? If we're not having orc attacks, if we're not in battle with the orcs there, what happens? So, making sure that we have we're not too static in the first half of the season. But we'll sort that out as we go through individual episodes.
Well, one of the things, and not to throw a monkey wrench in the works here, but we also have the Frey narrative.
Yes.
And I'm not saying we should go through and figure that out at this point, but I am thinking maybe we could do a little bit of a trade-off if we have some episodes that are necessary to move the story along but aren't necessarily super dramatic. The drama in that episode could be in the Frey narrative for that particular episode. So I mean,
it's conceivable. Yeah. We can always take a little bit more time with that if we want to.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Nick still wants to see Fëanor's wounding and his death separated into different episodes. Nick, I'm going to take a lot of convincing on that one. It's honestly, it's my number one item on my list of things that I'm not hugely happy with this outline. I don't get it. I don't get the move, like, let's have him mortally wounded and then give him like a super long Shakespearean, death scene that goes and through into the, to start a scene with him already wounded and then dying. Like Fëanor's death and collapsing into dust kind of seems like an episode ending thing to me. Like that seems like a perfect episode ending thing.
Well, actually, the collapsing into dust and then I think the Oaths of the Suns is a perfect episode ending thing, because that's going to be so big from now on that like the end of an episode is almost kind of like putting a period or an exclamation point on something, and it seems like the Sun's Oath would be the place to end. Especially if we tied into the Frame narrative somehow to give some kind of foreshadowing, like, and they were going to be sorry they did that, or something like that.
Right.
Not that cheesy,
right.
But,
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's we'll have to see. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not gonna have this argument now, because we'll see what it feels like when we get there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's
Or
see.
you set aside a whole entire session just for this topic.
Exactly. So we'll get there, and we'll see how it feels, with the story as we're going through at that point. I'm not sold on just the whole idea of like, I'm mortally wounded, credits roll. Okay, now I'm dying.
Yeah.
I'm not. It doesn't. The concept doesn't sit well with me, but we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll be convinced as we go through.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, but I'm tempted, Hakan, to follow up your suggestion. Hakan's making suggestions about stuff that could happen in episode 6, but let's wait until episode 6, because today we're talking about episode 3. Nobody can stop us from talking about episode 3 today, because I am not at all. Pretty soon, people are going to begin to suspect that I just really don't want to talk about episode 3. So, anyway, So let's totally do that. So the first I wanted to settle, as I mentioned last time, I wanted to talk about some general things, because the most important thing that happens in episode 3 is reacquainting ourselves with Beleriand. It's been a long time, right? This is the first. So when we shift back to Beleriand, we will not have seen these characters in almost a full season. I mean, it's been since episode 6, as I recall, of season 2 that we met any of these characters. So we need to remember who these folks are. So we need to think about, what is the court of Thingol like. Let's start by going through some of the people, right? We have Thingol and Melian in Doriath in peace. What's Thingol and Melian's relationship like on the regular? Right? We often make jokes about Thingol not listening to his wife, and of course, like, there are several prominent examples of that happening, but those are later, right? I wouldn't want to make Thingol and Melian appear to have a dysfunctional relationship from day one, right? And I also, Thingol is a really important character. I don't want to let him turn into Lord of the Rings Celeborn either. I mean, there's no question that he married up, right? There's no question that his wife is more powerful than he is. But I don't want him to look like a sidekick in his court, because I think this is even more important. I mean, I would kind of hope that we will succeed over time in actually rehabilitating Celeborn a little bit, and having Celeborn's story being involved in these earlier sessions and everything, so that Celeborn is an old character from the beginning that people are familiar with for years before, he becomes Galadriel's sidekick in Lothlorien. I think will put us in a different position when we finally get. We will see, we will encourage our readers to look at Celeborn a little bit differently than the Fellowship does, essentially, or than the Fellowship is invited to. So.
It's interesting you said, because the other side of it is, in terms of Thingol, I don't want him to turn into Ralph Cramden. Or for those of you that don't recognize Ralph Cramden, Fred Flintstone, who was a caricature of Ralph Cramden.
Right.
That kind of loud, blustery, that's also, it's almost like another...
Yes.
Not a spectrum, but you know what I mean? It's
yes.
Like he could go that direction too, and I don't really want to do that.
Yes.
I do think that one of the things would be... during peacetime, which I believe we're going to be showing, starting at this episode is going to be, Doriath in peace.
Yes.
He'll be, benevolent and loving toward Melian. And, what I mean? It's when the stress comes. It's when the stress of the war and the stress of his, kingship comes that we can see a change.
Yes.
Maybe,
yes.
Kind of a mini fall, if you will.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. I do think, because... things start getting ugly for Thingol at the Beren and Luthien story, right?
Right.
And that's when but that's going to be an understandable fall, right? We will see his quite understandable protectiveness of his daughter against a mortal man. I mean, that's a big deal, right? A mortal man coming in and suggesting that he could wed his daughter Luthien. So. Again, as I say, that's a big deal, and I think we can make that understandable. And I think it's important for us to make that understandable. So, what was that? What was the other thing I was going to say? Uh, anyway, yeah, but I agree. We need to show the good thing from which his character and from which their relationship, in a sense, is going to be declining.
Right. I mean, because the thing is, I would imagine Melian still has free choice in terms of where she decides she wants to be, whether she wants to just go Maya and go, you know what I mean? It's like, why would she stay with a guy who's a jerk?
Right.
At this point, you know?
Right. Yes. Exactly. So, yeah. So I mean, we can't have her. They have to be happy. Yeah, I mean, they have to be happy. Right. They have to be like that. I want Doriath to be like a happy, well-adjusted place. Indeed, the challenge we have, one of the really interesting challenges is we have to make like the other Elvish paradise. We kind of we did some work to sort of establish Elvish paradise over in Valinor, right?
Right.
This is another kind of version. This is like the alternative Elvish paradise. This is Elvish paradise in Middle Earth, right? Under the blessing of one of the Ainur, right?
And Doriath is going to be what Galadriel is going to try to make Lorien into.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that we can have. The difference, obviously, is going to be the trees. We're not going to have Malorns in Doriath. So it's for that reason. It's not going to look like it. It's not going to superficially look like Lothlorien.
It'd be cool if the trees were silvery. What are the white bark trees? Birches?
Yeah.
Beeches?
Yeah.
Be kind of interesting.
Silver
just
beeches.
A visual. Nothing said, but it's like. Instead, Doriath is full of white trees instead of gold, Malor trees.
And by the way, I think that we should have the elves of Doriath living, at least in part, on flats and things. They shouldn't all live in Menegroth.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So I think we should have a bunch of, so in that way, actually, it can be kind of similar, that they're anticipating the Golothrim in those ways.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, good. I see lots of agreement that we should not have their marriage be a loveless marriage. As Karida reminds us, she chose him, right? And she chose him for a reason. Exactly. And she's not a moron, who's immediately going to be like, Melian, like wisdom is the main thing Melian is known for, right? So we can't have it look like she made a really poor choice of husband, right? And have Melian be from day one be kicking herself like, man, why did I saddle myself with this jerk? Okay. Okay, David, I agree. Beeches are a little more robust than birch trees. Birch trees are too small to build flets in or anything.
So beeches would be.
Yeah, beeches would be cool. So, anyway, so the way I think to handle, and this was as Hakan was just suggesting in the chat, the distinction. Thingol is the lord of his people. Melian is a goddess who lives with them, right? So they should be in awe of Melian, but there's no real question about who's the authority. This is the difference when thinking about the Celeborn and Galadriel thing, and wanting to make sure that Thingol doesn't end up looking like a sidekick, right? Because we have already set this up by focusing on the story that Tolkien tells about how these people are devoted to the reason what brought this particular group of people together is that they were all so devoted to Elwë that they remained behind to look for him, right? So when they find him, they're happy and they follow him, right? Then yes, he's married a goddess and that's kind of cool, but it's not like they're following her, they're following him. They're in awe of her, they're very appreciative of her, but he is their lord and the one that they came after in the first place. So I think that dynamic seems to, so therefore there should be no question of her having authority. And I think one of the main differences, thinking again to like Galadriel and Celeborn in the Fellowship of the Ring, one of the main differences, she should talk less than Galadriel, basically.
Good point.
The thing that makes Celeborn look like more of a sidekick is that Galadriel kind of takes over the conversation and then ends up monopolizing it, essentially. And by the way, this was really interesting in the Treason of Isengard class. Just in 2 weeks ago, we were looking at the drafting of that scene, and it was so fascinating to see, because originally Celeborn was the boss. It was like Celeborn and he has a wife, right? And almost all the lines that Galadriel has were Celeborn's lines. I mean, he carried the entire conversation in the very first draft of that encounter. And then as he revised it, he gave more and more, like he allocated more and more of the lines over to Galadriel until because Celeborn's wife became the big deal, and she very quickly expanded in Tolkien's mind into like this really big deal. But in the very first draft, it was actually Celeborn who was kind of the bigger deal. It was originally the Lord of the Galothram that they were going to visit. So again, Melian, I think it's going to be easy enough to have her not speak much. Have her be mostly advising him in private, very rarely making any kind of public declaration. She'll talk to people. It's not like she's silent, but she's not going to be speaking from the throne, in authority, again, like Galadriel does when the Fellowship comes before them. During a formal audience, it's going to be Thingol who's running the show all the time, and that's what all the other elves there would expect and everything. So exactly, Tony and Marie suggesting similarly, she should be more like Mandos, who may occasionally speak, but only rarely, and of course it gives her words more weight, and therefore gives it more weight when Thingol disregards it and goes against it. So I think that's important. So Luthien, we do need to introduce Luthien, right? This is clear. Great question. Do we introduce her as a child or as an adult? I think she's got to be an adult. We don't have time for her to grow up, because we're not. And it was one of the things we talked about last time. By introducing Beleriand the way that we are, we're compressing the time frame. So I don't think we have time for juvenile Luthien. Besides which, if we introduce her as a child here, and I mean, she could be a child this whole season and then be grown up later on. But I don't like. It
adds. Yeah, we don't need the addition to this. The story. I mean, it doesn't add anything to it.
And there's like there's a sort of a non-zero chance that it could add a weird child molestation overtone to the Beren and Luthien thing when it comes. We don't need that image. I mean, like if we see her dancing as a child, right? And then we see her dancing in exactly the same way, and then Beren. I'm not a big fan of that. And anyway, like I said, not all that much time is passing here. I know we're going to get 400 years passing, but in Elvish terms, it's not all that much time passing. So yes,
no, it's not.
Young adult, Tony. Besides which, I don't really want to change actresses necessarily. So I think we just, we don't. So I'm fine with having Luthien as a young adult. She can be naive, Tony. I think that's showing that her not really understanding. But of course, like everyone's kind of naive. Almost everyone is kind of naive, right? The only elves who, all of the elves of the younger generation. Luthien is kind of a representative of them, right? There are some who have been there, right? Who were there in the journey from Cuivianen, right? We've got a bunch of Cuivianen veterans. Definitely, Thingol, definitely Celeborn. And we had Beleg and Mablung as well, right, in that original cast back in season 2, as I recall. We had talked about Dairon as well, though I would consider making Dairon of the younger generation as well. Did we have, remind me, script writers, did we have Dairon, did we do anything important with Dairon back in season 2? I kind of don't think we did. But, yeah, okay, so he wasn't in the older cast. Great, good. Let's have Dairon be in the younger generation, too. So then we introduced Luthien and Dairon, and introducing them together as a set, that's good, actually. I like introducing them as a set, because they are a set, right? He's the boy wonder of Doriath, right? The inventor of the runes, and the star musician, exactly. So... And the two of them are a matched pair. They should seem like obviously destined for each other. He's the great musician. She's the great dancer. This should be like the biggest kind of no-brainer, right? You know, that the two of them, they're not married, they're not betrothed, but like everybody totally assumes that that's going to happen, right? Including obviously Dairon himself and possibly even Luthien herself. Though I wouldn't want to have Luthien commit herself to that in any kind of explicit way, but anyway, yeah, he's so having him be younger is awesome, and for me, I think the images of Luthien, I think it's through Luthien and Dairon that we can most powerfully convey the sense of this elvish paradise in Beleriand. You know, Dairon and Luthien off in the woods together, him playing and her dancing and flowers springing up beneath her feet as she dances. That's, I think, you know, for me, that's kind of the snapshot of what this elvish paradise is going to be like. Yeah. So Mariel says, so his sense of betrayal is somewhat justified. In a sense, again, we can't have Luthien commit herself to him. I don't want any love scenes between the two of them. No hand-holding and you know, we don't want to depict Luthien as being unfaithful to Dairon. But we can make his presumption totally justified. Right. Make his commitment to her totally understandable, and everyone else being shocked and appalled, because everyone needs to be shocked and appalled when she shows up with Beren, right? And we have to make it clear that Luthien's choice of Beren is a shocking choice even to her, right? And that, you know, fate has overtaken her and turned her in a direction that she herself never anticipated, right? So that needs to be, I think, a big important element of the Beren and Luthien story from the beginning. So yeah, so it's going to be hard because we don't want to make it look like they're promised to each other, and we don't want to really be showing reciprocated romantic love between the two of them, because yes, then we have her looking fickle, right? And him being so he's not actually wronged. It's just the thing that seemed destined to happen turns out not to be destined to happen, and he can't handle it, right? But I think I want him to be not unsympathetic, because here's one of the things. So one of the things I struggle with in the published Silmarillion, one of the things that I never felt works. So you know the passage where Dairon vanishes, searching for Luthien, and there's that just a couple sentences about how Dairon is never seen again, and his music passed from the world, and he was lost. And you can tell from how that's described that that's a big deal, right? We're supposed to feel strongly about that. Like, that's a tragedy that Dairon, possibly the greatest minstrel of all in the history of Middle-earth, was lost in this way. But I never felt it. Like, I could feel the urge to feel it, but I never felt it, because Dairon was just like, I despised Dairon from when he betrayed Luthien and Beren, and I was so, I was always like, my sympathies are always entirely with Beren and Luthien, and so Daeron just becomes the bad guy. So when he disappears, I have never been able to rid myself of the emotional reaction that says good riddance to Daeron, because he was a jerk anyway. And I would like to see if we could get away from that. I would like to see if we could accomplish some kind of actual sympathy, not just sympathy, but so that his loss seems like a real tragedy. Because it's, yeah. So I don't want to. Yeah, Nick says we're going to get angry preteen hate mail about this. Yeah, Nick, honestly, if there's like a group of, like a large group of teenage girls who fall in love with Daeron and the actor who plays him, and we get like, a fan subset of like Team Daeron folks out there, like, that's okay. I'm fine with that. Like, I'm cool with that. I think that would actually be a success. Because again, I do think that the story wants us to feel both things. Like, it wants us to not exactly sympathize with Daeron, but to definitely to feel his loss. So yeah, I think that we should, but we don't have to just make him a hero. I am okay with Hakon's suggestion that maybe he's a bit conceited. Yeah. Oh, David makes an interesting point. David Atlee suggests that this could be a really interesting way for us to like drive the first tip of the wedge between Thingol and Melian, that the match between Daeron and Luthien could be basically Thingol's plan, right? Melian, and so he's appalled, as David suggests, when Beren comes in and Melian doesn't oppose it. When she seems to be like mysteriously okay with it, or at least not against it, as he hopes that she will be. He's hoping for some kind of statement from her, some kind of Mandos-like statement from her saying how this could not possibly be, and he doesn't get it, right? And Beren obviously even receives what seems to be encouragement from her, and so that kind of misunderstanding couldn't be part of what leads to Thingol's first misstep in his relationship with his wife and his overall career. Yeah. Now, Tony, that's a really interesting challenge. Well, actually, hang on. First, I want to address Hakon's comment. See, Hakon was suggesting we should see that he loves her in vain from the beginning. See, we're going to have to be really careful with this, but I don't want that. I don't want to show that she's not into him from day one. I think she likes him. I think she loves Daeron. She's just not going to marry him. She's not promised herself to him, and she's not going to marry him. I think she's attached to Daeron. You guys, some of you may remember, those of you who've read the Book of Lost Tales, if you remember studying it with me in the Mythgard Academy, originally Daeron and Luthien were brother and sister. The initial conception of them was as brother and sister. That's why you get the like dancing, singing thing, right? Because they're siblings, right? The musician and the dancer are siblings, because they're sort of two sides of the same thing, right? Two different aspects of the same function. So having her have affection for him, a sort of a sisterly affection for Daeron, I think that it should be shocking to everybody, even shocking for the audience to an extent. I think the audience should be fine with it. I mean, Nick, I'm like, bring on the like, the teenage hate mail from people who think that that she's done Daeron wrong. Like that's an appropriate reaction, I think, in many ways. Yeah. Anyway, And but again, I don't think we want. I agree. You know, several people are talking about how like sort of tragic it is that, you know, he loves her, you know, in a romantic, erotic way, and she doesn't love him that way. I don't think we want to play up that tragedy. There's no tragedy with Dairon and Luthien. The tragedy needs to come suddenly to the relationship of Dairon and Luthien. I mean, we need to wait until we get Dairon staring with like wide eyes and open mouth at, you know, Luthien putting her hand in Baron's, right? Because we want that scene, that the moment when Luthien stops running away from Baron and turns back to him needs to be a shock, a complete shock to everyone. This has to be something nobody can see coming. Luthien doesn't see it coming. Dairon doesn't see it coming. The audience doesn't see it. I mean, they probably know that it's going to happen, but it shouldn't be obvious. This should not be like, and now the romantic lead has entered and he meets like, it should not look like that at all. It should be absolutely counterintuitive. Yeah. And no, Nick, you're right. We don't want to be depicting the clever artsy guy being supplanted by the rough and uncultured jock. He's going to look like a rough and uncultured jock, and that's how Thingol is going to think of him and talk about him. But of course, remember, Nick, we will already have had Baron being the wounded, sensitive, friend to the animals, vegetarian by choice. You know, come on, like, no way, man. He's not going to be like a rough and uncultured jock by the time we get there. Anyway, so no tragedy. So I don't want any glimpse of unrequitedness. And this is where we come back to another elvish thing. And this is what Tony brought up a little bit ago that I wanted to come back to. See, the way that Tony said it was, where was it, Tony? Yeah, he says one of the things that makes human love so passionate, you know, and like impetuous is lack of time. We should feel that they have literally all the time in the world, so there's no rush. Yes, an elvish courtship like this can last for centuries. They're not in a hurry. They're not dashing off to the altar. They're not going to be overwhelmed by their passions. Even Dairon is not going to be like, you know, Dairon singing his songs to Luthien. He's not going to be some medieval troubadour burning with passion, you know, trying to convince his lady to have mercy on him before he dies, right? Of love for her. We can't. That's a human thing. This is another one of those moments where we get to try to depict how elves are different. So yes, there should be no. Oh, good. Lydia thinks that description made Baron sound dreamy. Good, Lydia. He should be dreamy. Like that should be, you know, but, you know, Luthien's reaction obviously is going to be negative. Anyway, let me not get too distracted in scripting season 5 before we get there. But anyway, yeah. So showing Dairon and Luthien in this like non-dynamic state, right? Where they clearly love each other. They are a matched set. Thingol can even speak of looking forward to someday when Dairon and Luthien get married, and, you know, and everybody kind of, you know, smiles in agreement and everything. But their relationship is totally put that. We don't want smoldering glances from Dairon as he's watching her dance. That's creepy anyway. And we don't want to encourage we don't want to have any role model on the screen who is, looking with prurient interest upon Luthien while she's dancing. That, by the way, is going to be a big challenge. But it's something that we need to think about here, right? Luthien has to be beautiful, but not primarily a sexual. She should not be sexy. Not very sexy. It's hard. Like, how do you make the most beautiful woman in the history of the world not sexy, right? But exactly, Marie, that's Morgoth's role. When Morgoth is watching Luthien dance, pruriently, right? And conceiving in his heart an evil lust, that needs to be different, right? And extremely creepy. So we need to make Luthien gorgeous, but not sexual. And her dancing should not arouse sexual desire. It should be, yes, Nick, joy, not lust, is what we're going for here. And David, I agree. It's primarily a costume challenge. Certainly in costuming, we can't. Luthien needs to be dressed very modestly all the time. It's, yeah. So this is.
Well, and also the actual dance moves themselves can be subtly different between what we see her do in Doriath and what we see her doing at Morgoth. I mean, she may, on purpose, with Morgoth, be evoking that,
that in the Book of Lost Tales, she totally does. Luthien flirts with Morgoth in the Book of Lost Tales. She absolutely does. She suggests that she left home because, she kind of had other ideas. I mean, she is totally leading Morgoth on. I mean, it's an act, right? But there is like a glimpse of coquette in Luthien's approach to Morgoth in the Book of Lost Tales. To me, it's one of the most shocking moments in the whole Book of Lost Tales. But anyway,
I would like to see us do that, because it would be like a major surprise to see her do that.
Yes.
After we've seen her be basically like Annette Funicello.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could handle it. I don't know if I could handle having Luthien vamp for Morgoth, but.
Well, maybe make it more subtle, a little bit more hip sway.
A little more, yes. Yeah. No, I mean, it could be subtle in some ways, but, Marie points out, well, she is dressed like Thuringwethel in that scene, so that's true. It's true, Marie. It could just be all the difference between doing her normal dance in her normal flowing medieval gown versus doing it in skin-tight leather, right? That could really just accomplish the entire effect that we're looking for there. That seems quite possible. It's a really good point.
A Batwoman outfit, yes.
Something, yes, exactly, something like that. Mariel's saying, but we made Thuringwethel non-sexy too. Well, we made Thuringwethel not be. We didn't want her to be like a sexual attaché to Sauron, right? We wanted to have him have an ally who was a female, but without being a sex pot. We don't want to have every single female bad guy, especially, just be sexualized. We already did that with Ungoliant. We don't want to do it with everybody. So we were trying to depart from that stereotype of evil women are always sexy, or like, being sexy is part of being an evil woman. I mean, like that whole thing we wanted to step away from, and I think that was a wise idea. But that's not the same thing as Marielle is saying. When dressed up like Thuringwethel, Melian isn't sexy, or Luthien isn't sexy. That's the point. The point is that Luthien gets sexy when she dances in Thuringwethel's outfit. The main point, I think, is just that, again, exactly, Hakan. It's not that Thuringwethel is a sweet girl. She's evil, but the point is she's not Sauron's girlfriend. That's the number one thing. She's not like just on screen to be, she's not trying to seduce Sauron. She's not. Her sexuality is not her main weapon. Her brain is her main weapon. She was the cunning one. She is the stealth ninja cunning. She is Sauron's primary, right-hand person. She's his main lieutenant. Draugluin and Tevildo, especially Tevildo, are unreliable, right? So I mean, it's really her that he relies on, and their relationship should be non-sexualized, because again, we don't want to go there with every female character. I think that's going to be an interesting thing. We will have several non-sexualized female characters whose lives don't revolve around relationships with men. That seems like a perfectly fine thing to do. Anyway, okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, several of you are making Batman references that I don't get, so I'm not confident in talking about them. Anyway, okay. Where were we? Luthien, Dairon. Good. Back to episode 3. So the main thing with Dairon and Luthien is to show them happy. And making happy being together, enjoying each other's company, taking joy in their music and their dancing. Dairon as the boy wonder, not only musical but intellectual star of Doriath. He's like the golden boy of Doriath. And so again, the sort of presumption that he's eventually going to marry Luthien can be explicitly in the air. But again, no passion, no unrequited love, no tension, no incipient tragedy, just joy, happiness. Everybody's happy to be together, and they're complimenting each other, and everybody likes to hear and see them, and that's great. Beleg and Mablung. Let's differentiate Beleg and Mablung's characters. The two of them are kind of joined at the hip. It's easy enough, of course, to have, Mablung is the melee fighter and Beleg is ranged fighter, right? But, to have Beleg be the hunter, primarily the stealthy hunter, he's the most woodscrafty of all of them, and Mablung is the bigger tough guy. Mablung, I would think, would be like the military captain, where Beleg is a prominent leader too, but he was Beleg is the scout and Mablung is the captain. I'm thinking Mablung should be the one who is really the primary. I think Mablung should be Thingol's number one guy, unless we want to make Celeborn Thingol's number one guy. So what is Celeborn's role? Mike earlier on suggested that we should depict Celeborn as sort of quietly competent, very really and good at everything he does. I kind of like that. What if Celeborn is sort of one of Thingol's most trusted advisors, right? So he's more of a, he's put more in the role of he can fight too. I think we want to show Celeborn in combat. But he's not primarily military. So Mablung is the primary military leader of Doriath. Beleg is the chief hunter and scout and woodsman, and Celeborn is chief advisor. Nick, I agree. Beleg is more the maverick. He's not like I shall lead the troops charging into battle. He would go off on his own more, and I think we can show him there. Yeah, David Atlee says Beleg is special forces and Mablung is the regular army. Yeah, okay. I can get behind that. Nick, exactly. Celeborn can be Thingol's consigliere. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's my thought there. But Hakan, I agree. He should have some outgoing fighting years before Galadriel arrives. Yeah, he shouldn't look like the guy who never goes out into battle. Of course, Thingol should go out into battle too. But yeah, so establishing him as wise, and remember the thing that Galadriel says about him in the Fellowship of the Ring, how he is the giver of gifts. It would be interesting if we could work something along those lines in as well. Have him be a gift giver at some point, not necessarily in this episode, but just kind of thinking about his character. If that's something that he is able to do. Nick is suggesting he's Thingol's herald, like Elrond was the herald to Gil-galad. Sure, yeah. Have him standing next to Thingol, holding his standard in battle. I can totally see Celeborn doing that. Mablung would be, sort of leading the charge. But Celeborn would be right there standing next to Thingol and helping defend him and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I know, David, gift giving is reserved for the king, and he does that when he's lord and everything. So I'm not saying that he's there distributing gifts, because you're right, that would have him supplanting Thingol's role. That line just kind of popped into my head, and so I'm kind of thinking about setting that up, and because there are some other ways in which we could set that up, but ooh, wow, that's a really good point, Tony. Tony points out another couple characters that we never considered that we need to think about. Namely, Orifer and his son Thranduil, who are Sindar. Right? Yeah, Tony, I literally didn't think of that at all. Wow. Nick, it could be a later generation, but we do need to think about when they come in. I'm totally okay. Like, Orifer doesn't have to be a Cuivianan elf or anything. So it's okay to make them younger. And Thranduil can be a boy. I don't know. We could get away with not introducing them here at the beginning. But we need to introduce him sometime before the fall of Doriath, and if so, when? Could we introduce Orifer? Maybe Orifer and Thranduil can play a role in the fall of Doriath. Like, they can come in. We can give them some kind of job. Yeah, because at that point we're running out of other folks, right? Because, like, Celeborn will have moved away with Galadriel, and Beleg is dead, and Dairon's gone, so we will be running out of minor characters, supporting cast in Doriath by the time we get to the fall of Doriath. So we could wait to introduce Orifer and Thranduil there, and they could be with Dior. Yes, Nick. Even after the death of Thingol, we could have Orifer be one of Dior's people. Yeah. Hakon wants us to introduce Galathil, the father of Nimloth, who's going to marry Dior. Maybe. I don't know that we need to make him a big player at this stage. Yeah. Hakon, what I'm tempted, though? Because, see, I'm tempted to do a little conflation here. Wouldn't it be just easier to give Nimloth a different dad? What if we made Nimloth the daughter of Mablung? Or somebody else? I was going to say Beleg, but that's a little too tragic. I mean, though, can you be too tragic in the Silmarillion? But no, it's not too tragic. The reason I'm resistant to having her be the daughter of Beleg is it's almost a little too wish fulfillment, right? Like, to think of, like, Beleg might have died, but he left a legacy behind him. Like, and I'm suspicious of my motivations there. Ooh, that's interesting, Hakon. Making Nimloth and Thranduil siblings. Have her be the daughter of Orifer. That's interesting. Of course, then we have a close kinship between Elrond and Thranduil, which might be closer than There are going to be third age consequences to that, because that makes Thranduil and Elrond what? Second cousins? Something like that. That's I like the idea. But I'm a little worried about Legolas being that close a kin. Now, David, Atlee makes another great suggestion about Nimloth and Celeborn. Is the kinship between them important? They can't be too closely akin because we don't want Elrond and Celebrian to be too closely tied together. But if Nimloth... Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. Yeah. Brianna is right. Brianna says, Thranduil never felt equal or close to that lofty circle of elves. He just wished he was. But Brianna, in part, that seems to me an artifact, right? I mean, that seems to me a consequence of the fact that Thranduil was basically sort of Thingol recycled for the Hobbit, right? He's sort of like Thingol light recycled for the Hobbit, and then integrated later on, and so therefore made a lesser son of greater sires. In a Silmarillion context, Thranduil is not even he's very afterthought. He's an afterthought, right? From a Silmarillion perspective. I guess I don't have a huge problem with kind of promoting him and making him into a bigger deal. That would kind of set things up interestingly. I guess if Nimloth is the sister of Orifer, so I'm just trying to think through the family tree here. If she's the sister of Orifer, then Dior... No, wait. She's a sister of Thranduil. She's Thranduil's sister. If she's Thranduil's sister... Sorry, I'm getting all confused here. If she's Thranduil's sister... that makes Thranduil 2 generations up from Elrond? Golly. I was thinking of making Thranduil no more than Elrond's peer. But yeah, exactly, Mike. So Dior would then be Thranduil's nephew. And Dior would therefore be Legolas's cousin. And so Legolas would be... So Dior and Legolas are cousins. That would make Legolas Elwing's first... So he would be first cousin... So Legolas would be first cousin twice removed from Elrond. And Legolas would be older than Elrond. I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time having Legolas be older than Elrond. And now we can have Thranduil wait a really long time for Legolas to be born. Legolas could be born in Mirkwood. But yeah, Mariel, that's exactly the problem I'm having. That if Legolas is higher up on the family tree than Elrond, I that's kind of blowing my mind. That's hurting my head. I don't know that I can handle that. I'm kind of inclined to have Orifer be the sort of younger generation advisor to Thingol in the latter days. And he still sticks around and is an advisor, is more of a peer. Orifer is sort of a peer with Dior, but he doesn't have any children. Legolas isn't born. And then Orifer and Thranduil. Thranduil himself isn't born. And Thranduil is a boy. I'm imagining Orifer fleeing with juvenile Thranduil across the mountains after the death of Dior. So when that happens, yeah, Orifer and Thranduil can be young. And then Legolas isn't born until later on. He's born in Mirkwood. Yeah. Um, yeah. And Brianna, yeah, you're right. We do get the story of like who's Legolas's mom, right? He doesn't have a mom, so like who is his mom and where does she come from? She would have to be an Avari or at least a Nandor, Brianna, right? I mean, those would really be the only options over there. So, um, yeah, yeah, exactly, Marielle. Orifer comes in with with the Nauglamir story. Yeah, he's part of that story. That's where he would be introduced. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Let's push Thranduil and so that means I'm kicking the can on Nimloth. Um, I don't think we need her yet. Because if she is going to be the daughter of somebody else, like Mablung or Beleg or somebody like that, we don't have to introduce her yet. She can be a kid. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I guess I know. Episode 3. We're totally getting there. This is important. We're officially already talking. We're not talking about the plot of episode 3, but this is the concept of episode 3. We've got to get our characters down, right? Come on, give me a break. Okay. Good. And I agree with Brian Dimmick's suggestion that Marie passed on here. Thingol's court itself could be quite simple. He doesn't need a lot of retainers or ceremony surrounding him, and as time goes on, he's corrupted by pride in the Silmaril, and we see him placing himself more at the center of Doriath and expecting the attention of a court. Yeah, Brian, wouldn't it be cool if being brought in before Thingol, when Beren is brought in before Thingol, that's a not exactly unprecedented, but a really big deal. Like Thingol doesn't normally do that, so the whole Hall of Judgment thing that he does to Beren can be him acting out of character already, basically. Can be showing him having a not good response to Beren and the whole situation. So yes, it can be casual because there's not a whole lot of need for there's not a lot of crime. They don't. There's not a whole lot that needs looking after in their kingdom. This is yeah, and Tony, we will see them, as you say, forming more of a council of, they do a kind of a council of war thing, right? But it's not really, it's still not a formal, and now the king is sitting in his throne. He shouldn't even have a throne, really. I think that would be fine if he didn't have a throne. I'm not saying he needs to, construct, have a throne quickly constructed so that Beren can be brought before it, but I don't think that he really focuses on that. Okay. Hey, let's do another slide. So we've talked a little bit about the culture of Doriath, but just sort of segueing into that a little bit more. Just a few thoughts. These are thoughts from the discussion boards. The contrast between the Havens being a town and Doriath being a widely scattered people. Yeah, and I would love to see them up in the trees. Right, I would love to see some flets and ladders and things. But yeah, very, very, very casual. Whereas yes, the Havens are a town. You will have buildings and streets and things at the Havens.
That's a little-known Elvish child game, Flets and Ladders.
Flets and Ladders, exactly, yeah. That's it. Yeah, so the court moving from place to place, they shouldn't have, there shouldn't be anything special. They shouldn't have a palace of some kind pre-Menegroth. Menegroth should be the first center that they really have. I think that's totally fine. How much agriculture are they doing? None? None. I'm okay with none.
So they're basically gathering from...
Yeah. They're gathering from the forest and hunting. They're gathering and hunting. I would think that would be fine. I don't think there need to be grain fields. The at the havens they can have fields. They can be growing grain in the town. But fruit and nuts, David, absolutely. That's totally fine. Karita wants to know what an elf party looks like. This is a crucial question, Karita. I agree. How much drinking? Lots. But of course, the drinking just, it leads to merriment and not, so they get a little more tra-la-la-lolly, the more they drink. That seems to me what happens to elves, right? I'm totally comfortable, by the way, with the idea that when Bilbo and the dwarves arrive at Rivendell, the elves that they meet have been partying for some time. I would be totally fine with that concept, but I think that at the havens, Tony, they certainly should be. They should be fishermen at the havens, definitely. There can be some trade between them, right? They can be sending they could bring meat from Doriath to they could ship meats to the havens and fish back to Doriath and stuff. So that all seems perfectly fine. Now David is saying, where do they get alcohol if they don't have grapes or grain? You can make liquor out of fruit. Wild barley. Yeah. Oh, and pearls, Hakan. Yeah, we need to have the pearls. We need to emphasize the pearls. We need to set that up so that we can barter pearls with the dwarves in season 2. Yeah. We do need to remember the pearls. No, there are wild grains they can use. There are fruits that they can use. It'll be fine. I'm not gonna worry about where they get their booze from. Lots of leisure time for the arts and feasts is a regular part of daily life. Yes, and I do think the whole movable feast thing, that when we see Thranduil and his people having their woodland celebrations in Mirkwood come Hobbit time, that should be recalling. What we should be seeing there is basically Thranduil and his people trying in the Third Age to recapture some of this life of peace that they lived in Doriath before the orcs came. But of course, they're living it sort of under siege, right? As Mirkwood is changing and the spiders are encroaching and all that kind of thing. Good. Okay. No, I agree, Hakan. We're not going to be spending a lot of time on food production, but it's good to have these things worked out, right? It's good to be doing this kind of sub-creation. That's interesting, David. David Atley says, do we want to see the Hall of Fire concept invented in Doriath and passed down? No. David, I think the Hall of Fire should be a Gondolin concept. I think that Elrond should get it from his Gondolin heritage. I'm thinking the Hall of Fire is a Pengalod thing. That's what I'm thinking. Whereas in Doriath, they're much more into songs and dancing in the open air. Yep. Yeah. Great question, though. Awesome question. Festival in Nan Elmoth celebrating hunting and Orome. Well, sure, they can. I mean, they live in the forest and they hunt a lot, so celebrating Orome seems like a sensible thing for them to do. Okay, let's go up to Angband. So, first, let's talk about the nature of the orcs. And Hakan, let's address the question that you were raising before. I was saying that I want the like dispersed soul of Morgoth's power to be a season 4 thing, and you were like, but doesn't he do that in this very episode? Yes, the beginning of it. But because so they're when I was talking, okay, here's what I was talking about with the season 4 thing. What I want to show in season 4 is Morgoth in an arms race. He's not in an arms race yet, right? This is just him like twisting the orcs and being like, okay, they're not angry enough. I want them angrier, right? So he changes the concept of the orcs from what Sauron was trying to build, and doubtless he does put some of himself into them to make that happen. But we're not going to see the effect of that. Morgoth weakening himself, that's not going to be it's not going to be an issue. No one's going to be talking about that. That's not going to be a concern. Sauron can perceive that, and we can have some conversations between Sauron and his minions, right? Between Sauron and his team about like what's going on with the big guy, right? But that's not until season 4. So if it happens here, it's not apparent. So it becomes apparent during the arms race, which happens later on. So, what I think we want to show happen. So did we decide? We probably did, and I've forgotten. Sauron's orcs. What were they like? I remember we talked about, he was trying to, Sauron's goal, was to make followers, right? He wanted to create worshippers and servants and allies rather than slaves or soldiers. That was his plan, right? And then Morgoth comes back and he's angry, right? Morgoth comes back in a very bad mood and says, "No more. I want these to be like the instruments of hatred. And so he twists orcs into the hateful, angry, loving torture, just like I want to inflict as much pain as possible. So as Hakan says, from like elf zombies to real orcs Mariel, that's an interesting suggestion, that if Sauron had his way, the corrupted elves would have become something more like the idea of the drow, right? The evil elves, then they would have been like orcs. Sure, I can see that. Like that was sort of the direction that could have been sort of going there. And then Morgoth adds hatred to the recipe, stirs in a healthy dose of hatred and anger, and Bulldog will be commissioned, right? He will come in and establish Bulldog. So Bulldog is a spirit of wrath and violence. I really love that phrase. Yes, exactly. And Sauron should be a little bit sort of looking askance at Bulldog. He should be really cautious about Bulldog. Like, who is this guy? Is he here to, why did he make a new captain? But I think the function of Bulldog in this episode, when we meet Bulldog, should be like when we see Bulldog being established. He's not created. He's not going to be corrupted because he's already a spirit of corrupt. He's going to be embodied, is what he's going to be. He's going to take this spirit of wrath named Bulldog, and he's going to embody him in an orc body. Morgoth is. And so this is our opportunity to have exposition of what the orcs are and what the orcs are going to be. And so this spirit of wrath and violence is, Morgoth explains that he wants to infuse the orcs with this spirit. Essentially. Tony says that, Bulldog, like the Maya spirit that is Bulldog, should be a fallen Maya of Tulkas. That's a really interesting concept, Tony. Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect, Tony. Just as Tolkas takes delight in combat, right? He takes delight in tests of strength and laughs as he runs into battle. So Bulldog, and the orcs delight in battle, but they delight in slaughter. They delight in killing things. It's not just delight in the physical test, right? And of course, the physical stamina of orcs and their ability to run, for example, for long distances without slowing, is like Tolkas as well. So yeah, I like that. How do we bring him in? Okay, so Nick is saying we had an intro for Bulldog in episode 1. That's good. Yeah. I think that, so, David is saying, does Bulldog assume a shape he finds intimidating and the other orcs are forced into a shape following him? No, David, I would say the shape of the orcs is Morgoth's doing. He twists them, right? So we have the elves, the corrupted elves that Sauron was working on, I think can still be beautiful, actually. But I think that but then Morgoth twists them, and when they're full of hatred and rage, that becomes manifested in their outward ugliness, and so they become physically twisted. And then David, when Bulldog is embodied, Morgoth sort of pushes him to embody himself. When he's embodying the same sort of wrath and anger, so he takes the same shape as they. But they're sort of, in that sense, they're first, I think. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, Tony says it's like an evil version of Melian in the sense that she took the shape of an elf to marry Thingol. Yeah, in a sense. Yeah. So, Nick, remind me of what of Bulldog did you guys cover in episode 1? But anyway, yeah, I'd be interested to hear that. I don't even remember what I said about Bulldog in episode 1. So, Morgoth Bulldog, not a political player, right? We don't have a triumvirate there under Morgoth in Angband. It's still just Sauron and Gothmog who are the lieutenants of Morgoth, and Bulldog is placed under the orders of Sauron. How well do they work together? Well, none of the bad guys work particularly well together. That's interesting. Ricola is wondering if Melian should be familiar with Bulldog's former Maya self. Maybe. We would have had to set that up, though. Yeah, not sure about that. Yeah. Okay, also, Nick, so you have him embodied already? And Sauron has one of his proto-orcs, one of his sort of drow elves with him, and the elf reacts with open revulsion, and Bulldog murders him. Okay, that's what you put into to episode 1. Okay, all right. Getting out his anger, right? And then Morgoth's going to come in and twist them. So we're going to have okay, all right. I can work with that. You guys can make this happen. It's fine. But we don't want him plotting. Bulldog doesn't plot against Sauron. Bulldog sometimes does his own thing. Like, he'll rebel against it. Like, I think that Bulldog, I'm thinking essentially of a bigger version of Shagrat, essentially. He follows orders, and he does what he's forced to do. But left to himself, he's going to serve himself, and he's going to follow. So I would think that Bulldog would sometimes follow his own initiative to do what the heck he wants to do, and Sauron might not always be pleased with what he chooses to do. But he's not going to plot. He's not going to try to overthrow anybody. He just sometimes goes off the leash, essentially. Yeah. Yeah, Kurita says, taking orders to hurt things and people? Sure. Teamwork? No. Yeah, exactly. He's not really a team player. But but he will also react to fear. I mean, he's been told, Morgoth tells him to do this, and we might have to show Morgoth having to beat him down at some point. We may have to show Sauron having to beat him down at some point. But because that's the way he would be kept in line, is through fear. But anyway, yeah, okay. Do we see orcs in episode 3? Yes. I think that has to be the we're going to be setting up, we're going to be reminding everybody of characters and showing Doriath and be like, hey, look, there's Luthien and there's Dairon and they're a big deal. And, so there's going to be a lot of that in the sort of central middle part of this episode. But the drama of this episode comes in when they encounter orcs, and I think it should be Beleg in one of his, scouting, hunting, so Beleg and a few of his hunters who encounter orcs first, and that definitely needs to happen. So orc encounter by Beleg, but remember the elves of Cuiviénen will remember the Dark Rider. They will remember days of fear. One of the crucial elements of episode 3 has to be this peaceful time in Doriath. They think they have escaped. They believe that they have established, especially now that Melian is with them, my goodness, right? They were pretty sure that they escaped the danger around Cuiviénen when they settled down here. And now, they've got Melian living with them. So now, not only have they found their lord, but they found their lord and his goddess wife. So they believe that Doriath is inviolate, and not just that it's inviolate, but that there is no danger, right? They don't think that there are any bad guys. So we need to have the reaction when they meet the orcs should not be like, oh no, an enemy. It should be like the fact that these things are enemies should take a while to filter in. They should have to, this is a shock to them that there are creatures like this. And I suspect that their reaction would be, Beleg's reaction would be, to think that they're probably just like some rogue thing. Like, we need to, the reaction to this would not be military action because they don't suspect that there's going to be military action. The reaction should be hunting. Like, we know these things are dangerous. And so apparently there are these like little monsters in the woods now, and we need to make sure that none of these monsters come anywhere. So Beleg is going to protect the sanctity of, the little elvish paradise that they have built. And he's going to become a hunter of orcs. Yeah, Marielle's thinking like, these creatures are unlovely, but, so are many things, right? Like boars. Boars are unlovely too. That doesn't mean they're evil. Yeah. But see, Hakan, I'm thinking when they meet them, these are Morgoth orcs. So I don't think that these are, I remember the suggestion that what they're meeting are proto-orcs. I don't think they meet proto-orcs. I don't think proto-orcs ever go out into the wild. The proto-orcs are with Sauron, and they get taken over. They're not sent out. When they get sent out, they are sent out for destruction, or some of them just go out for destruction. They're full of, when after Morgoth fills them with anger and hatred, some of them head out and start killing stuff. So there's not been because again, like military discipline, not really big for orcs, right? They don't obey very well. They can be cowed, right? They can be intimidated. Remember the whole, like, I'll report your name and number to the Nazgul thing, right? Orcs have numbers in Mordor. That Sauron system. So, hey, that Sauron system, that should probably be the system that we should show him having to institute that system. I know, I'll give them all numbers. Anyway, but the point is, they have to be kept in line. They're always going to be unreliable servants. So the orcs that Beleg meets, I think in episode 1, are just some wandering orcs who shouldn't be there. but they've escaped the main orc enclave, and are Sauron would certainly have preferred to just unleash them all at once in an organized army, so that the elves are completely unprepared. So Sauron is going to get irritated, I would think, when he hears that some of the orcs have wandered out and the elves have encountered them. Sauron is going to be miffed about this. And maybe this is what leads him to beat up Bulldog in the first place. I don't know. Or the first time. But he definitely... this is so I think that when they meet orcs, the orcs should be official orcs. They shouldn't look different from future orcs. These are the official orcs. This is just the first wave of the army escaping and going off and doing their own thing and blowing Sauron's plan for surprise, essentially. The spell of bottomless dread. Does Morgoth use a spell of bottomless dread on the denizens of Angband? Okay, so for those of you who don't understand that question, the spell of bottomless dread is another unfinished or Book of Lost Tales thing. No. That phrase has to be used because the spell of bottomless dread, I mean, that's got to be a thing. It's a really creepy thing. But the spell of bottomless dread is what is when the Noldor who are captured, like elves who are captured and enslaved in Angband, they are placed under the spell of bottomless dread. That's what ties their wills to Morgoth. And by the way, that's going to be really fascinating to do, right? Remember that like one line that we get about how when some of the prisoners from Angband escape and they're not trusted by their families, and sometimes for good reason, right? Think of all the stories that one sentence gives us the opportunity to tell, right, in future seasons. That's going to be really, really interesting to try to depict the atmosphere of Beleriand in those latter days. But anyway, we're not there yet. So I want to save the spell of bottomless dread until Morgoth gets elf captives of his own. What we want to emphasize with the orcs is not bottomless dread, but sheer enslavement. That they are being twisted and warped in the way that Morgoth wants them and wound up to do what he wants them to do. But leading an army of orcs is still... Well, it's not like herding cats, because cats will simply disregard you, and the orcs won't disregard them. The herding cats metaphor is quite overdone, and therefore, it's overused. And as most overused similes or metaphors do, it becomes sloppily extended to things that are not captured by the original metaphor. Yeah. So that's not what it's like. Tony says it's more like a pack of hunting dogs. Yes. Or like... Yeah, Nick, I agree. The spider campaign is more like herding cats. Yes, getting a whole bunch of spiders going in the same direction is like herding cats. Especially, remember, Shelob is Sauron's cat, right? That's there in the Lord of the Rings, right? Okay. Yeah, so the enslavement of the orcs to make them... I'm just thinking of... Sorry, the phrase that just kind of cropped up in my mind. Again, I'm thinking of the orcs, Sauron's orcs being twisted. The phrase that just came... Remember, Myron is a Maya of Aule, right? Remember Aule's desire, him making the dwarves because he has the desire to have learners to whom he could teach, right? I think that impulse is there in Sauron too, and it's warped so that instead of just making learners whom he can teach, he's also making like worshippers, who will worship him. So that's it's already twisted, but we can still see that compared. He's not trying to make slaves. He's not just trying to dominate their wills entirely. Not at this stage of Sauron's life. He'll get to there, but when he gets there, he'll be a shadow of himself, right? Early Sauron here, whose feet are now firmly on the path of evil, but he's not unrecognizable yet, right? So we should show him having an almost like mentor kind of relationship, but again, it's still corrupted, right? So they worship him, and he encourages them to worship him, but they're like his proteges more than they are like his slaves. And then Morgoth comes in and makes them into just brutal, savage, hate-filled slaves of his own will and his own desire to conquer. And Sauron obviously thinks that this is a waste. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, Hakan, here's the summary of episode 3, an outline of episode 3 that you did a while back, just to sort of have some talking points here. So let's see Hakan's suggestions here. We begin with the Noldor and the Storm of Uinen, yes. So we will see, I think we start with the lamentations of the Teleri, right? And then we go to Uinen and we see her tears and... that a scene maybe even in which Ase tries to restrain her. We talked about Uinen before, so we get this. We get the storm. We get the wrecking of many of the ships. We need an end point to that. Where can that scene end? What do we want to finish with the Noldor before we shift and go to Beleriand? We need some kind of transition. We can't just end in the middle of the storm. We can't cut from the storm, because then we're giving the impression that they're all going to get wrecked, right? Which they're not. We need to show that some of them survive. I think we need to end that with a meeting. I mean, they need to be escaping. I think we need to have Fingolfin and Feanor meet. Feanor is going to make capital off the storm, right? For his leadership purposes. Feanor is going to make a speech saying, see, the Valar are trying to stop us, but we can't be stopped, and we will continue on, and we are going to... he would do his let's go back to Middle-earth where we can have wider realms kind of talk again. That could be the transition. So we get Feanor talking about his vision of the kingdoms that they will rule in peace and splendor over in Middle-earth, and that can be the transition to the quite different kingdom, not quite like what Feanor was describing that we get over there. So we see, hey, look, there are already elves in peace over in Middle-earth. Fingolfin can emphasize something like how difficult the journey is going to be, and how this is not the last hardship that they're going to face before they get to Middle-earth. Something nice and foreshadowing like that, and then we can transition from there. Ooh. Oh, Tony, I love that idea. Oh my goodness. Oh, Tony, that is so brilliant. Okay, here's Tony's brilliant suggestion. We had talked about incorporating the breaking of Fingolfin's sword into the battle on the bridge. But Tony's suggestion, this is even better. Tony says, what if in this meeting Fingolfin draws... So we recapitulate the scene where Fingolfin draws his sword against Feanor, right? Or it looks like we're visually recapitulating it. It looks like he's drawing his sword on Feanor, but Fingolfin draws his sword and breaks it, right? I kind of love the breaking of Fingolfin breaking his sword as the sort of point of transition to to Beleriand. That's really neat. I love that. Yeah, no, Nick, Finarfin doesn't break his sword. Finarfin chucked his sword away. He doesn't break his sword. So Finarfin might have his sword in hand when he hears, before he sees anything, right? He hears clamor and he draws his sword and as soon as he sees what's happened, he just chucks his sword away and runs down. No. Finarfin does not break his sword. Fingolfin breaks his sword. But yeah, Tony, I love that scene with the recollection of the strife between Fingolfin and Feanor. So it's another foreshadowing thing, both a recalling of the earlier scene and foreshadowing of future strife. But yet it ends so emphatically differently with Fingolfin breaking his sword. I love that. That is brilliant, Tony. Okay, all right. So we finished with a Noldor. So we go back to the court. So now we got Thingol and Melian in their court, and we establish all those different characters, and that's good. Okay. Trish, I'm hearing your dogs in the background, and I keep thinking it's my dog upstairs barking. Yeah, it's okay. I keep. I'm
hammering.
Yeah, between the hammering here and the dogs, yeah. I keep thinking it's my dog upstairs barking at the construction workers. I'm like, oh, no, my dog's over there.
I go suit anyway, so.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, cool. All right, so we have, again, a lot of episode 3 is the stuff we've already talked about, establishing the characters, establishing Thingol and Melian in their court. We're getting Daeron and Luthien. We need to go back to Angband. I think we could go to Angband as a transition. I think that we could go from Fingolfin and Feanor and cut to Angband and do because we need to set up the orcs. We need to make sure that the orcs are created before we meet them, right? So we have the creation of the orcs, and then we cut away from that so that we can meet the orcs later on at the end of that same episode. Okay, then we go to back to Thingol and Melian and Luthien and Daeron, and now the introduction of Eol, and sort of bringing in the Eol storyline here. I wonder, is it going to be enough? We already have many things. Oh, Círdan. We wanted to go from the storm to Círdan. Right. Okay. Right. We see Círdan before we see Thingol. Sure. Yeah. I'm fine with cutting to Círdan from there. I'm thinking, do we go Storm, Fingolfin and Feanor, Fingolfin breaking his sword, cut to Círdan, cut to Angband, then cut to Doriath, so that we don't get Thingol and Melian still for a while there. Yeah. Notice this is already a lot of scenes, right? I'm not sure. I love the introduction of Eol, or bringing back of Eol. We had him earlier. We had Eol taking part in the debate at Cuiviénen, which is great. I'm not sure we have room for him here. I might want to save Eol for episode 4. It depends on how much room we have. We could have, if we need more plot, if we need more story in this episode, we could have an interlude of them encountering Eol. So like the movable feast of Doriath, right, comes to Nan Elmoth, and Eol has, since they've last been there, Eol has arrived and claimed it, right? So we could have a confrontation between Eol and Thingol there. Yeah. if we've got time. If we've got time, we could do that. I don't want to bring Meme in yet, because we're no dwarves. No dwarves. I don't want any dwarves. I don't want any dwarves on screen in episode 3. Dwarves on screen has to be an episode 4 thing. I want to save the reveal of the dwarves. Too many reveals in one episode. I mean, we got to get used to the orcs in this episode. But we could set up Aol, because he's going to be playing a role in episode 4 with the dwarves. So yeah, I mean, I love the idea how kind of the feast in Nan Elmoth and Aol saying that he wants to live there. Yeah. Well, yeah, Nick, I know Nick says there are 12 to 16 episodes or scenes in an episode. Yeah, but I'm being real sloppy. I'm not talking about scenes. Like the Noldor, I talked about the Noldor thing as a scene. Really, it would be like 3 or 4, because we're going to have, Uanin and Ose, we're going to have the storm, and then we're going to need like reaction shots from, Fingolfin and them on the shore, and then we're going to have the ships landing, and then we're going to have them talking together. So, I mean, each of these things that I'm describing are going to be a series of scenes. But anyway, if we have time for Aol, okay, here's my thematic consideration with Aol. Pushing Aol back to episode 4 enables us to make the orcs be the first discordant note in the Elvish paradise. If we bring Aol in first, then he becomes our first bad guy, right? He becomes that first discordant note. And I'm not sure I like that. I kind of like the shock of everything is great. Everything has been lovely until Beleg discovers the orcs. And then we can have, yeah.
I think Aol needs his own bad guy arc in a separate episode.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to just shove him in. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm kind of torn between wanting to set him up so that we already have him for episode 4 when we meet the dwarves.
Can we do something at the beginning of episode 4 with him?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly do the Nan Elmoth thing in episode 4. But no, Nick, I'm not suggesting we don't have any fighting. I think we should have fighting. I think that this should be not just a solitary orc. I think this should be a little pack of orcs. Like, I don't know, 6, 10, something like that they meet. A few, not just one, not an army, but not just one. A pack. They meet a pack of orcs. And the pack of orcs are doing nasty things like torturing animals, or, they see them like, chopping up and eating the corpse of a deer or something. They... Beleg cites them. Beleg, I would think, should try to befriend them, right? I mean, he should assume, like, when he sees them, he's like, oh, whoa, I haven't met these guys before. He's not gonna go all stranger danger the first time he sees the orcs, right? So he's gonna go up to the orcs, and he's gonna be like, hi, my name is Beleg. Good to meet you. Who are you? And they're gonna be like, blah, right? So they're gonna attack, and he's going to have to, with like much surprise and probably hesitation, fight them. And yes, exactly, David. You're on fire today, David. David Atlee says the initial reaction to orcs should prefigure the initial reaction to men. Indeed, I would love to have. Wouldn't it be cool, David? Because remember, Finrod is going to be hunting too when he comes across the humans. Wouldn't it be cool to create like an actual parallel there? That the scene that they come across is it's not the same, obviously, but that there should be some kind of visual parallels between Beleg coming upon the orcs and Finrod coming upon men later on. I really like that. Yeah. So there's definitely going to be combat, like Beleg, and he doesn't have to be alone. Well, I guess it depends. Beleg could be alone if we want to establish like Beleg, the awesome hunter and incredible bowman, right? Having an action scene in which Beleg is like being the hunter becomes the hunted, and this troop of orcs to whom he tried to make nice, attacks him, and he kills one or two of them right away, but then has to flee and shoot them from behind trees. And so I get that could be done really well, I think, to show that Beleg is a serious butt kicker. But Marielle, so how would that work with Sindar getting slaughtered in equal fights by orcs? First of all, Beleg is unusual, right? Beleg is not just any other elf. And we know that Beleg is equal to many orcs. Like that what he is able to do, shoulder to shoulder with Turin shows that he is very capable of defeating many orcs. But at the same time, the way that the orcs are going to overcome the Sindar is going to be that they're numbers, right? Numbers, and the orcs can't stand against the Noldor. The Noldor just mow them down. We're not going to show the Sindar doing that. Even Beleg's not going to do that. But Beleg can take them. Yeah. Mario wants them to do damage. Mario, you think we should have Beleg have a red shirt or two? We could do that. I mean, if we want to ramp up the horror a little bit, Beleg could be coming out with two of his close hunting friends, and the orcs Beleg could be the only one who escapes, and we kill off the other orcs. That would be. Hakan suggests Elmo as the other the guy that we kill off. There's an elf named Elmo, and we don't want anything to do with him. I love that suggestion. Yeah. David is also suggesting we could entertain the idea of giving Beleg a scar that would stick around for the rest of the series. So he receives a wound from the orcs in his first battle and bears the scar of his first encounter with orcs for the rest of his life. Hey, I like it. That would be cool. It's a cool idea. So, yeah, and we had the suggestion of Mablung encountering the dwarves. I want to save dwarves for episode 4. Do we think this is enough? Nick, Marie, Hakan, what do you guys think? If we so the Noldor stuff that we described, right down through the breaking of Fingolfin's sword, Círdan, premonitions of something that happened, right? Being uncertain, established there, the havens. We need to have pearls, right? Pearls need to feature, right? We need to have them. We need to have, like Círdan with his hands full of pearls at some point, right? And that needs to happen here because we need to be shipping out the pearls next episode. And then we Angband, the Angband scenes, a couple of people were suggesting the Angband scenes could be short. I don't think so. I don't think we want them short. Because I think that we want to be, there's a couple things we want to establish. Goals of the Angband scenes need to be, first, establish Sauron and the Proto-Orcs, right? What were the Proto-Orcs like? What is Sauron's relationship with them? We need to establish that. Then we have Morgoth come in and say, we need to have them being twisted and Sauron being miffed. We need to have Bulldog being put under Sauron's command. We need to have Morgoth. Morgoth knows that that Feanor is going to come after him. Morgoth is not surprised by Feanor coming after him. So he tells, and also he's worried about the Valar coming across, because as far as he knows, like Orome and Tolkas are going to be right on his heels, right? He's going to be worrying about that too. So the Noldor might come. He believes that it's possible that Feanor will come, but even more, he's worried about Tolkas and Orome. So that's why he puts Gothmog and the Balrogs on the northern front, because he believes that that's the way that the Valar are going to come pursuing him. Sauron, he says, to Sauron he gives the charge of destroying the elves that are in the south, because he is done with elves and he wants to see them all destroyed. But do we have Thangorodrim already? Did we raise Thangorodrim in episode 1, Nick? Did that happen? Nick, I'm not sure I'm understanding the distinction you're making between the intro stuff and plot. There is going to be plot, like the completion of the Noldor plot, like something is going to happen, right? The storm's going to come up. They're going to survive the storm. They're going to determine that they're going to go forward and not be deterred by any attempts of the Valar to stop them, right? So that's plotty stuff. Okay, yes, we raised Thangorodrim in episode 1. Okay, great, perfect. No, Hakan, we don't need any Sindar reaction to that. There are no Sindar in the north. Remember, we're simplifying. There are no Sindar in the north. All of the Sindar are down with Thingol and Melian in Doriath. So when Thangorodrim is raised and Morgoth returns, the Sindar don't know about it. Melian might feel a disturbance in the Force, right? Maybe. But they don't see it. It's not part of it. Okay. Nick, yeah, the Noldor thing is, it's more than a few minutes. I can't see how we can, because remember the stuff we talked about with Uinen, right? Uinen's decision to break, to go against what Manwë said and her being restrained, but then her grief being unable to be restrained. So we need to have, we have an Uinen scene, right? We're gonna take a couple minutes with Uinen, right? And then have the storm, and then have them surviving the storm, and then having a conversation between Fingolfin and I'm not in a rush to leave the Noldor. It's fine. Again, if that means fewer things can happen in Beleriand, it's cool. Episode 3, as far as Beleriand is really a setup, right? It's a setup for the real action doesn't happen until later on. Beleriand exists. Oh, and the orcs are coming, right? Is enough, right? I mean, that's enough for me to as far as I'm concerned, to sort of happen there. But yeah, so no, Nick, we don't need to intersperse that. We've been with the Noldor all the way through. We stick with them, right? Until we shift. That's why I was talking about the shift, the transition, over to Beleriand. And Círdan, you're right, Hakan, we talked about this before and I'd forgotten that. Círdan is the logical transition, right? As he has some sense of what's he has a premonition from Ulmo, from Ase, as to what's happening over there. And he's upset. So we get from him to the Havens, and from and thence to Doriath. And I'm kind of taking back the order that I said before. Maybe we use, I was thinking of Angband as the transition between, but I'd forgotten, no, Círdan is the perfect transition in between. So maybe we save Angband. Maybe we do the whole Noldor segment, which can be some time, and that's totally fine. And then we go to Círdan in the Havens, and then to Doriath, and establish Beatific Doriath, right? And from there we shift to Angband. Meanwhile, in Angband, this stuff is happening, and then that then leads us to the discovery of the orcs at the end. That's exactly doing that. Like, I'm not saying halfway through the episode, Nick. I'm saying a third of the way through the episode is when we do that transition. Yep. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. Yeah, David says, perhaps we can build some tension in the episode by giving Melian a premonition that something is wrong. Thingol sends Beleg out to find out what's wrong, and this mystery runs through the episode. Yeah, the only thing I want to be careful of, David, is I wouldn't want to undermine the shock to Beleg and the others. Like, if they're going out looking for trouble, when they see the orcs, they're going to be like, hey, wait, is this the Neville, right? You know, is this the trouble that we've gone out to look for? And that undermines the, like, hi there, we come in peace, blah, right? All of a sudden, orcs. So, yeah. That's that works. So Nick is unhappy that we're creating a pair of episodes in a single episode. Well, Nick, so the creative challenge then is, how do you make them fit? So let's think about that for a minute. How do you connect them? How are the two halves of this parallel, right? Because they can be parallel. I think that we can parallel them, right? The obvious, in a sense, right? One way to think about the three different elements in this episode, you can think of them as sort of three different parts of it's not exactly a spectrum, but on one end you have the peaceful paradise in Doriath. Benevolent, fun-loving, music and dance. Everybody's happy. Everybody's willing to be happy with each other. On the other end, you've got Angband, obviously, right? And Morgoth and the orcs, which are, you know, the orcs being insufficiently hateful for Morgoth's liking, right? So you've got Angband at the opposite extreme, which is not only about not having fun, but about going out and wrecking everybody else's fun, right? So you've got them like, we want to find happiness and stomp on it. So we've got those at two extreme ends. The Noldor are in the middle, right? On the one hand, Fëanor still has and can communicate this vision of the paradise that they can build for themselves in Middle-earth, right? That they are going out in defiance of the Valar, but they're going to crush Morgoth. They're going to recover the Silmarils, and they're going to establish, they alone will be masters of the true light, and they will establish this new enlightened realm, pun fully intended, over in Middle-earth, right? So he has this image of paradise, of this Noldor paradise, but we can see that Fëanor's paradise is already perverted, right? It's already twisted and corrupted by his own fall. The fall that he's in the middle of doing. And of course we have the at the same time, the Noldor are also in the middle, in that the kinslaying from which they are still coming with the blood of the Teleri still upon them, is like this paradise wrecked, right? So the in Beleriand, we have a paradise and the people who are setting out to wreck that paradise, right? And the Noldor are wanting to establish a paradise, but their paradise is already twisted, and they just came from wrecking somebody else's paradise. So in that sense, they are the Noldor are yes, Tony, they're in the middle. They're standing between Morgoth and the Sindar. I think that can work. Yeah. But see, Nick, it's not, you know, Nick is trying to convince me that it's like, you know, combining Hamlet and Midsummer Night's Dream in a single play, but it isn't, because it's not a comedy and a tragedy. They're both tragedies. They're just at different stages of the different places are in different stages of the tragedy, right? In a sense, in Doriath, we're getting a glimpse of what the Noldor have already lost, and what the Noldor are endangering, in a sense, right? What they just took away also from the Teleri. And of course, we see these enemies out there who are wanting to take it away from them. So the same things are at stake for everybody. It's not a different kind of story. It's not a comedy and a tragedy mixed together. Yeah. Yeah. So, so no, I mean, I think if, can I name a single theme that connects this whole episode? All of these points together, that connects the Angband sequence plus the Doriath sequence plus the Noldor sequence. Yes, my theme for this, and in fact, my suggested, what was the? Didn't we have a? You guys had suggested titles here. Meanwhile in Beleriand, right? Okay, that's a placeholder. Here's my title. Ready? My title of this episode: Paradise Lost. That is my title of this episode. That's the theme. That's the theme that ties everybody together. Paradise Lost. It's just they're in different stages of losing it, right? And different kind of perspectives on the loss. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But no, see, Nick, it's cool that they're in different stages. That's fine. No, not at all. Is it a problem that they're at different stages of that story? They're not proceeding in parallel. The Noldor have already lost their paradise last season, right? You know, when Finwë is killed and Fëanor rebel, it's over, right? That's the cool thing, is that they're not in the same place, right? They're fighting the same battles, they're facing the same things, but they're not at the same spot in their own particular developments. Just like Fëanor and Fingolfin are not in the same place, and they're both of them at least experiencing the temptation to fall, right? Both of them have like similar paths available to them, but they're not going to go the same way, right? Their stories aren't going to develop in the same way. You know, really all three of them, Finarfin, Fingolfin, and Fëanor, we have all three of them, you know, in a similar situation, but they're not in the same places in their own development, in their own relationships with these things. So yeah, exactly, Tony. Tony says the episode starts with the loss, you know, the sort of the loss and the aftermath of loss of paradise over in Valinor, and ends with the beginning of the loss of the paradise of the Sindar. And that trend, that progression, I think can accomplish the sort of sense of inevitability that we get, and that the Silmarillion conveys so powerfully, right? Of like, you know, the creeping doom, right? It's all like, you know, it's gonna crumble, right? It's not gonna stand. Yeah. Okay, cool. No, I see, Nick, the more I think about this, the more I love it. I think this works great. I don't want to separate them. I want to unseparate them. I deliberately, I think we accomplish something by juxtaposing these two. And there's Círdan in the middle, right? There's Círdan covered in pearls. Exactly, Tony. It's all a long defeat, and we can show that. What we're seeing when Beleg encounters the orcs, and we get the first violence, the first death. And Mario, I like your idea more and more to give Beleg a red shirt or two in his party, so that we can have some elf fatalities in that first encounter. To really convey the grief and the suffering, the Paradise Lost element there. Yeah, the long defeat, right? It's the beginning of the long defeat of Doriath. It'll take a while before Doriath is ultimately destroyed by the Fëanorians, right? But still, it's going to be, it's the very first movements towards that we see happening there. Okay, awesome, great. Well, I need to end now. We need to close this up. So, questions for next time. Okay, hang on. Nick has one more question here. Nick wants to bookend the episode with the Noldor stuff so it's less disjointed. I'm open to that argument, Nick. I am open to coming back with Fingolfin and Fëanor and their debate and the breaking of the sword of Fingolfin at the very end. I don't love it, but I'm not totally opposed to it. Yeah, see, Marie, that's my problem. That's why I don't love it. As Marie says, we're leaving the Noldor for 4 episodes after this. So ending the episode with the Noldor, that would seem to sort of springboard us forward from Noldor into episodes in which we're not going to see them again for a while. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to veto it right now, but I'm willing to hear arguments for it, but I'm not a fan. Okay, for next time, what do we want to show of dwarf culture? We're going to have multiple dwarf clans, right? We've got the dwarves of Belagost and the dwarves of Noldor. Do we want them different? Should they be very different from the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, right? That is to say, can we make them different from the dwarves that we know in The Lord of the Rings? How homogeneous do we want the dwarves to be, is my question, right? And what should we make their culture like? Because there's a lot of interesting questions about that. Of course, dwarf culture changes a lot over time in Tolkien's world. So how do we do that? Okay. So that's my first question. My second question, Meme. We need to introduce Meme, I think, in the next episode. What's the relationship between Meme and the rest of the dwarves? Is he a loner? Is he not a loner? Is he attached to one of the clans? Is he a leader of one of the clans? Meme was originally the Durin of the dwarves back in the Book of Lost Tales. He was the eldest of all the dwarves originally. So we could put him in a leadership position, or we could make him an outcast, a loner. If he's a loner, why is he a loner, right? What's up with Meme? So we need some more backstory from Meme and his relationship here. How do the Sindar encounter the dwarves? So, of course, how do we want to do that scene? How is Eol involved? I love the whole idea of bringing in the Eol and non-Elmoth business here. How do we connect that with the encounter with the dwarves? So yeah, how does this unfold? There's a lot to untangle there with the Eol stuff and the dwarf stuff. And we might as well think a little bit more about Eol's character. Of course, I didn't put that in as an official question, but we should probably do that since we've kind of put it off for episode 4 now. We're going to need to embrace that for next time. So, all right. So, dwarves for next time. Lots about dwarves. We will start with a general discussion of dwarves and dwarf culture, like we started with the general discussion of Sindar characters and Sindar culture this time. Yeah, so, all right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. I look forward to our next episode. Our next episode is in 2 weeks, so we're talking about the